NFL quarterback Derek Carr is quoted as saying, "Football is what I do, not who I am. My faith is everything." Derek Carr reminds us that the game may be what we do, but it's not who we are. And that tension between performance and identity is something every athlete eventually has to face. Today's conversation dives right into that space. Welcome to today's episode, Spiritual Conviction and Sports. All right, welcome to the Playing with a Purpose podcast, where we explore topics related to the moral development of collegiate athletes and young people as it relates to character, responsibility, and purpose. I'm your host, Matt Barker, and today I'm excited to have Freed-Hardeman men's basketball player Eli Pounders with me on today's episode. Eli, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
Tell us a little bit about yourself for those listeners that might not know who you are. Obviously, you were on the men's basketball team here at Freed-Hardeman. Tell us a little bit about your background, basketball experience, hometown, family, all that good stuff.
So I'm a freshman, about to turn 19 this Saturday. From Florence, Alabama, went to Wilson High School until my junior year, and then I finished off my high school career at Mars Hill Bible School, where my junior year we won a state championship. At Freed-Hardeman, I'm a Bible and psychology double major, and one day I'm hoping to get my master's in clinical mental health counseling to kind of bridge the gap between mental health and...
So, Mars Hill had a lot of successful teams over the years, especially in the last couple years. So had a lot of positive experience there in high school, and Drew Stutz recruited you to come here and play for Freed-Hardeman. And your first year with the team, this year you redshirted, and you'll be playing next year. But had a good experience with the national championship in your first year with the program. And tell us a little bit about how that was, just being able to be with the team during the time at the national championship in Kansas City.
It was a lot of fun getting to be able to be a part of the preparation and the work that it takes to be a national championship competitive team, and to be able to work with that and to be able to see where I need to be next year to be to the best of my ability. And it was just a lot of fun being around the guys. It's a fun group that we had this year, and I wouldn't have traded them for the world. Yeah,
absolutely. Lane Lauterball, I had him on a previous episode, and he talked about how together the team was and how much fun it was to compete with them, but also off the court, even just a lot of the good experiences y'all were able to have. So it's always good to be able to have the on the court experience, but also love each other off the court as well. And it sounds like all of y'all had that. You mentioned you were a double major, Bible and psychology. Want to get into mental health counseling and some of those things, but also that Bible foundation. Today's episode, we're talking about how that faith and the spiritual conviction ties into competition and in sports and everything. So to you, what would you say spiritual conviction means to you personally? And when did you maybe start making that connection between being a competitive athlete, but also having that spiritual foundation as well?
Spiritual conviction has been one of those things that's kind of been around in my life for a long time, but it really didn't settle in on what it was to me until my junior year when I had moved to Mars Hill. And when I'd spent more time with people that were always in that environment of they knew how to walk spiritually in their whole life and not just in certain areas. Like before I'd moved to Mars Hill, church was kind of like a Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night thing. And then the rest of the time it was kind of like just be a good person.
Yeah.
Didn't really experience a lot of spiritual conversations and stuff like that. And then I go to church camp the summer before my junior year as I'm moving to Mars Hill and stuff. And that's when kind of spiritual conviction hit me first. And I was like, man, I really need to change the way I'm living right now and make sure that I'm keeping God as a priority instead of just like a checklist throughout the week. Right. And with that, going into my junior year, I started realizing, like, on the basketball court, I've never had, like, a issue. I never talk trash. I don't do that. That's not my thing. I don't ever cuss or anything on the court. I'm just always been, like, a simmer guy. I like letting my game do the talking.
Right.
But it was kind of like, in sports, you don't really see a next level of sportsmanship. Like, there's a little bit of sportsmanship here and there, but, like, you don't see many people play a sport with joy and helping other people and do it at a high level.
Yeah.
And that's what I kind of wanted to do when I got to Mars Hill, and make sure like people saw that it was a different level of basketball being played. But also I wanted Christ to be at the forefront and center of that play.
Yeah. So talk about some ways that maybe you talked about how you wanted that to be kind of the foundation for who you were, both on the court and off the court as well. You want that to translate from how you are off the court to the court as well. What are some ways that maybe you did that? Sports are naturally competitive, so some people get into that mode where they're a good person, but when they're on the court, they're a totally different person, and they're just, maybe they're talking trash, maybe they're doing some of those things that you mentioned that you said you don't typically have done in the past. But sports can be pretty competitive. What are some maybe ways that you balanced having that competitive drive, but also having that spiritual conviction in the background the whole time?
I mean, I hate losing, as every athlete. Very competitive, want to win everything I do, never want to lose. But the thing with trying to balance it is, like, the games we play and the stuff we compete for, it's all temporary.
Yeah.
And it all fades away at some point. So it kind of just got to the point where I'm going to count it as a blessing that I even get to compete in the sport that I do at a high level. And I just try and focus on that in the moments where it's like getting down to the wire and things are getting crazy, where I don't lash out. It's just kind of like keeping the peace of knowing that, like, just being there is a blessing, and getting to compete. I think a lot of times it can get to the point where it's like a basketball court or like whatever field you're competing on, it just turns into a whole different place. Like, you don't see it as anything counts towards spirituality or anything except for that sport. And I just really had to really focus when I played on making sure that I didn't do any of those things where I, like, treated people the way I would treat them off the court,
right,
on the court as well.
Yeah. And there are times in sports, even, depending on who you are, even if you're the most calm person, there's times in a season where maybe a bad call is made, and you tend to maybe want to lash out in a little bit of anger there. How do maybe you control that? And maybe is there certain influences in your life that have maybe helped you along the way? Maybe it's family, or maybe the way you've seen other people handle things, mentors, whatever it is. What are some things that maybe influence that? And how do you kind of keep your composure in times where maybe everybody else is losing their cool about things?
So the way I've tried to think about it is refs are human too. I made, like, in the same game that I'm complaining to a ref about a call or something, I've missed shots, made bad passes, misdribbled the ball, done plenty of things wrong that I could have done right. And if that ref makes one bad call, I shouldn't just lash out on that ref, because, I mean, they're a soul too, so shouldn't really blame them for something that happens.
Yeah.
And my dad's probably a decent mentor about it. He was my coach in high school.
Oh, yeah.
So he complained about every single call that go our way. So there was times where he would chill, but most of the time he would complain about calls. But there's some other people in my life, like my preacher and youth minister, Austin and John. They kind of helped direct me to, like, learning that stuff about sports.
Yeah.
And that I can't control what the refs call. I can control what I do on the court, and the attitude I have carrying on.
Yeah. What are some things that help you have, maybe, again, sometimes there's heat of the moment and things happen. What are some things, maybe some habits, some things that maybe you do before a game, some things that help you have that positive mindset, not trying to be too hard on the refs or anything like that, but is it prayer? Is it just a little bit of just kind of thinking through what's going to happen in that particular game, whether that's high school or college? What are some maybe habits that you have that help you get the right frame of mind before you go into competition?
So usually before games, when we go warm up, if I ever put my AirPods in, or I'll go do this before in the locker room, I'll listen to some hymns to really calm me down and keep me composed. And the adrenaline's still there, but it's just like the emotions are kind of settled down. I'm calm, and I'm just ready to compete. And then as we're stretching and warm-ups, I'll say a prayer before the game to remind myself, like, why I'm here, like, what's the cause of the reason I'm here.
Who you're representing. Yeah.
And all that kind of things. And that just kind of really puts it into perspective about, like, the results are going to fade away, but who I'm playing for is always going to be there.
Yeah. One of the things I want to talk about too, because it's an interesting dynamic, you might go to high school where you have people that are the same background as you, religious background, and just kind of the same upbringing as you are, maybe in Florence or wherever you grew up. Here at Freed-Hardeman, it's a little different. So you have people coming to Freed-Hardeman. Obviously, there's a lot that are members of the church that have that same religious background that you do. But then when you get to the basketball court, you have people here for a variety of reasons. You got people that are here on scholarship just to play their sport, and maybe they have a different religious background. Maybe they have no religious background at all. So you have a mixture of guys that obviously you all got along very well, but you probably came from a lot of different backgrounds. So you being a Bible major, psychology major, member of the church growing up and had a lot of that background and experience, how did you maybe use your spiritual conviction, your spirituality, faith to maybe have an influence on those teammates around you without coming across as like being preachy and just trying to be, I'm better than you or anything like that? How did you maybe balance having that, trying to maybe help your teammates spiritually with their faith without coming across as being like judgmental or preachy in some ways?
So what I've found to do for my approach is just really showing the love of Christ, really like displaying the fruits of the spirits when I can to them. One thing that I focus on is not like giving in if there's something going on that isn't necessarily what I believe, not really going for that, but not really like sternly correcting them either, just kind of like making a conversation about it and asking them about it, make them think a little bit about like what they do, why they do it and stuff like that. And that's led to a bunch of really good spiritual conversations with them. And I've really enjoyed those. And I think the thing about not being preachy or forcive is just really being their friend above all else.
Yeah. And I think what I've heard from a lot of people is, you have to have that relationship there for people to respond well to what you're telling them, whether it's positive or negative. If you develop that friendship and that relationship with them, even if you have to have an uncomfortable conversation, they're going to respect you for it because they know that you have their best interest instead of just like, hey, I'm better than you. You need to do this because I'm a Bible major and I'm telling you this. Yeah. You have that familiarity, relationship, camaraderie, all those things. You've been through a lot of things together. So obviously they're going to be a little bit more likely to listen because you've been able to develop that relationship. And that just gets stronger over time too. So what about in the locker room? There's, again, different beliefs, different backgrounds, different upbringings. People come from different areas where they have a different approach to how they do things. Is there certain things maybe you did in the locker room prior to going out for a game to get your teammates motivated, but also having them think about things like character and some of those things that's also important outside of competition?
One of the big differences probably they all listen to rap music. And I'm not really a big fan of rap, but I'm not going to complain or say anything about it because that's how those guys get going and that's how they play their game, and it doesn't affect me really. But I think it's basically the same thing from the last question, not really giving in to that. Like if a rap song had a cuss word in it or something, like someone might say it, right? But just making sure like not giving into that, making sure they like see there's something different about that guy. Yeah. And really just being a light in any way that I can, in any opportunity. Yeah. Just being that example, right? Yeah. And it doesn't always have to be you're telling them something. You're demonstrating the way to do things and things that you should say and not say. And being that example, I think is very important with that too. How has Freed-Hardeman helped you? I know you mentioned that you've tried from an early on in your athletic career to have spiritual conviction, have that faith incorporated into your play. How has maybe studying here at Freed-Hardeman Bible department, you obviously take Bible classes, you've had some mentors here probably in the Bible department that you're advisors, whether that be just other professors that you've had. How has that maybe strengthened your faith even more and helped you look at things a little bit differently? I think the depth of things that we've gone into, it's been farther than I've ever been able to go on my own or at Mars Hill even. And it really just adds like another foundation to my faith. And it really makes it just a little bit deeper. And I've appreciated all the Bible staff that I've had in class. And they've all been really good. And I think another thing along with how good they have been is how good that Coach Stutz has been with spiritual mindedness for the team. He's just been a really good example. We like kind of co-coordinated helping getting some stuff going for the guys to have some spirituality in their lives to kind of hopefully convict them spiritually a little bit to help them grow as Christians and on the court as well. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Coach Stutz. I mean, obviously, going, I guess, back to your hometown, University of North Alabama, Grant Burns is now going to be the head coach, and they worked very closely together. So in some ways, a lot of things probably won't change, but in some ways they will just from having a new head coach. Tell us a little more about your experience with Coach Stutz and him recruiting you and just that experience and how
maybe he influenced you throughout the season and how you saw a lot of those things come to fruition that maybe he talked to you about in the recruiting process?
Coach Stutz has been awesome. I was looking at this the other day. He first messaged me after the Final Four game my junior year, and he was telling me he was rooting for us to win the blue map and everything. And then that summer, he gave me an offer at their elite camp, even after we lost to Bartlett by 50, which was interesting to say the least.
Yeah.
But just in the recruitment process, he would check on me. And then there was a point in time I broke my wrist. I was going through it. It was a struggle. And he would just make sure I was doing okay and kept me encouraged. And then since getting here, he's been just awesome. He's really checked in on me, making sure I'm doing good spiritually, trying to be a spiritual leader for the team. It can take a lot, and he really made sure that I was doing okay and that I was being fed as well.
Yeah. Talk about Grant Burns. Obviously you worked with him quite a bit too, him being the assistant coach. Maybe he had a different role than maybe Coach Stutz did. Now him taking on the head coaching role. What was kind of your relationship with him this year, and how do you see that maybe changing as the next year comes up?
So Coach Grant, he was our scout team coach. We would run the plays that he had given us and everything like that. And we just had a good old time. If we ever messed a play up or something, he would get on to us. And then it was just a great old time. We had a lot of fun together. And Grant, he's one of the smartest people I've ever met when it comes to the sport of basketball. And he's really good at just keeping the vibes up, keeping the energy up, coming every day with the same intensity, and just making sure that we are right mentally and physically.
Yeah. And as if I understand correctly, he was the one, everybody talks about Freed-Hardeman's defensive pressure. He was the one who scouted what defensively you need to do. The scout team is really trying to show the players what that looks like on the court. So a lot of that defensive pressure, hopefully we'll see more of that next season, because he was one of the ones instrumental in implementing a lot of that defensive pressure that we're known for. So hopefully a lot of those positive things will remain the same for next year. Talk about, this year, obviously there's nothing that you did wrong. The decision was made to have you redshirt for a year, so you'll have an extra year to play and all those things. Sometimes that can be a challenge to have to sit out for a year. Was it a challenge for you? What are some things maybe not necessarily a setback, but you really want to get out there and play, having to sit out for a year and then getting 4 more years after that? What were some of the challenges of that, wanting to be out there playing, and did that test anything as far as your faith or anything like that we've talked about today?
I think the biggest challenge with it is not playing in games. But even with that, I got to play rotation minutes against Bethel.
Yeah, did get in a couple games, yeah.
Yeah, so doing that sort of stuff helped a lot, but really just mentally checking myself and being like, there's a role I'm playing this year. I need to commit fully to that role. And there's a little bit of setback with, am I good enough to be here and everything like that. And then I put into perspective, I am the second youngest on the team. I'm not used to this level of competition. And in practice every day, I get to go up against the number 1 defense in the country, number 1 team in the country. So that just really set in perspective that just every day I get to play against the number 1 team in the country. And then next year, how much better that's going to make me than if I started off this year and I still have 4 more years to play some basketball.
You mentioned early on, which I thought was really good, that you try to keep in perspective that what you're playing is a game. And if you keep that in perspective, all these other things you kind of put those things in perspective. So if you focus on this is just a game, how has maybe your view of success changed, even though the team has had success this year? How has it maybe changed as far as your faith and all those things as well?
The way I measure success for a day or a game or things like that is I try and go through check boxes of, did I put my best foot forward today? Did I give the day all I had? Did I positively impact other people around me and not just myself? To really wrap it all up, check and see if I honored Christ and glorified him in whatever I did for the day or the game.
Yeah. So kind of wrapping up here, if you had any advice to give, specifically maybe to an athlete that has a lot of faith and spiritual conviction, how to balance that, what advice would you give to maybe a younger athlete that maybe is wanting to play at the college level, that is maybe a member of the church, maybe just has some religious background, they're trying to balance that competition with faith? Maybe what is some advice you would give to them as they start that process?
So there's a verse that really convicted me when I first started to kind of connect my faith with sport and everything like that. It's Romans 12:2. It says, do not be conformed by the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the constant renewal of your mind so that you can attest to God's pleasing and perfect will. And I think that's just really gotten me through, like, being in worldly environments through basketball has kind of caused, there have been times where I could conform and give in to the ways of the world. But in that verse, it tells us to be transformed by the constant renewal of our minds. Mm-hmm. So I've really just tried to, I would say, focus on Christly things when it seems impossible. When you're in the valley, look up for the light instead of down in the darkness.
Yeah. Let those moments change you, not just be influenced in a negative way, but let it change you in a good way. Like, use those opportunities that might be challenging to help others, to help yourself do better in those things that you're trying as well. That's some good advice. Well, I appreciate you coming on, and good luck next season because you'll be playing. So we'll look forward to seeing you play.
Thanks for having me.
All right, as we wrap up, we'd like to thank you for listening to today's episode of the Playing with a Purpose podcast. Special thanks again to Eli Pounders for being my guest this week. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like and follow the podcast to be notified of upcoming episodes. Also encourage you to share this podcast with a friend, colleague, athlete, or coach you think might benefit from the content discussed. You can listen to the Playing with a Purpose podcast each week on Spotify, YouTube, or anywhere you listen to podcasts. You can also catch the Playing with a Purpose podcast on the Freed-Hardeman Athletics Champions of Character website at gofhulions.com/champions of character, the NAIA Champions of Character website at naia.org/champions of character, and on the Ministry League Podcast Network. Till next time, remember, winning isn't just about the scoreboard, it's about the character you build along the way. We'll see you next time on the Playing with a Purpose podcast.